Okay, Carl. Thanks for joining us today. A lot of leaders listening will either have stepped into a new school recently or be considering a move to a larger setting. So I think your journey will really resonate. The question that I've got for you is: you moved from one leading one form elementary school to a much larger three form elementary school. What motivated you to take on a leadership role in a bigger, more complex organisation?
I think I'd got to the point. I'd been in my previous school for quite a while. I started there as an assistant head, and then became acting head, and then head teacher. And I'd been head teacher there for a few years. And I'd got to that point where I was just ready for that next challenge, and the next step in my career. And I just felt the next step. So I was starting to look for larger schools. And that was when I came across Roberts, and Roberts is a three form, so that step from a one form to a three form felt big. And I think what the kind of thing for me when I came to look around Roberts, it was at the time it was a requires improvement school.
Yeah.
But just I think what my background and what I'd done at Quinton at my previous school, just around teaching and learning, around curriculum, what my experience was there, I knew that I could transfer those skills across into a bigger school. But the main driver was that just having been head and being head of a one form was a good starting point into a good move into headship. But I was just ready for that next step, really, of moving into a larger school.
Right. With that, what were some of the most noticeable leadership differences between leading a smaller school and stepping into a much larger one?
The biggest one is that just down to the number of people. So even just down to the number of teachers. In a one form school, you've got 7, maybe 8 teachers. In a three form, I've got 22, 23 teachers. I've got 84 staff altogether. And just that difference. And so just when implementing any change, doing that with 7 people compared to 23 people is completely different. And I think I'd underestimated that initially in terms of the how much longer that takes to implement that change and how harder it is to do with a much bigger team,
especially with all different needs and all different personalities.
Definitely, and just everyone being at very different starting points. I inherited a really experienced team when I moved across to where I am now. But even so, then we've got a mixture of early career staff as well as really experienced teachers. And being able to meet everyone's need and finding the right starting point for everyone was a real challenge.
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges when stepping into a new school is balancing listening and learning with setting direction. When stepping into a new school, how did you begin shaping a clear strategic direction while still taking the time to understand the community?
So it was a challenge, and I think one of the additional challenges that I had was coming into an RI school that I didn't have time to come in and wait 12 months before really implementing change. I had to do that from day one. Ofsted was due at any point from when I walked through the door in September. It could have been then. It wasn't. It was last week. So I had that year, but it could have been straight away.
On immediately.
The
pressure was on immediately.
Definitely. So we couldn't wait basically to start that change. And that was a challenge with where do you start? Knowing very little about the school, but also managing that amount of change that was needed with the community and with the staff community and the wider community. So that had to be really carefully planned out and thought about. And the starting point was what had been identified in the previous office inspection, what the data was telling us. But we didn't have time. We had to start from day one. I was in a really fortunate position that the staff team that I inherited were really on board with that change and wanted to change and wanted to adapt and improve. So I didn't have any pushback from staff. I didn't have any staff who were resistant to that change. They welcomed it, which made life a lot easier. But like I say, we didn't have time to come in and to get to know the community and start. It had to be from day one where that change process began.
Yeah, I think having a team that's on board is great for any new challenge or project that you're taking on. With that, what advice would you give to a head teacher stepping into a new school for the next sort of 30, 60, 90 days?
I think
what do you think the priorities that need to be?
You need to know what you're coming into. You need to have a really good understanding of the school, ready for day one. And that can be, from visiting, from Ofsted reports, from talking to members of staff and getting to know the community in that term before you start, really. And that was kind of where I'd got my information from, and then we could plan from that. But I think you've got a limited amount of time to get to know the school. But if you're in a position where in an ideal world, you would come in that first term. That's where you would get to know everyone. You would get to know the children, get to know the community, get to identify what the key priorities are. If you haven't got that luxury, that's where you've got to do it from the information you've got available, really.
Where do you believe your leadership time has the greatest impact in that scenario?
I think from the experience I've had, that the greatest impact it's been available to the community. So one of the things again that we had to do, and I say we because we changed the whole leadership team very early on as well. We had a restructure. It was we had to be available to the community. So we were very early on. It was listening to staff, listening to parents, finding out what people wanted from, what did they want me to do in those early days? What did they see the priorities as, and what did did that marry up with the information that I had to be able to prioritize the things that we needed to do. And I think that in terms of that leadership time, just having that time available for people and just having that door open to be able to have those conversations to listen to what staff and parents need from you.
Earlier in the conversation, you sort of alluded to that when you came on board, the staff team were on board with, getting the school out of the situation that it was. How did you create deeper relationships so that they felt that they had the buy-in and they could come to you with suggestions or pressures or stresses to help you take that sort of vision and move it forward?
I think the key to that was around. So I started in September. The first day in school was an inset day, a training day, and I think the first thing I did there was set my vision for the school and said this is the direction that we need to take the school in. This is where over the next 12 months, this is what we envisage happening. I shared the school development plan with the whole staff team, so they knew what the priorities were. They knew what this is what we're working on this academic year. And I think through that, staff commented that they were really clear on the direction of the school. And I think just having that and again just being really open with them in that conversation. As those priorities were shared, we then had a conversation. So this is what I'm setting as a priorities for the year, but what else do you identify that is not covered here? And I think just making it really clear with staff from day one that we're open. It's an open team, and that you can come and say and actually and challenge and question and have your input and you will be listened to, and staff will say that now. We had Ofsted last week, and staff were very open that they feel listened to because they know they can raise something. And there's times I will say, actually, we can't work on that now. That's not a priority, or we're doing this for a particular reason, and we need to stick with it. But staff know they can come and voice those things, and they can come and have that conversation with me or any of the senior team, and they'll be listened to. And I think just setting that expectation with everyone from day one, so everyone knew that they had a voice in our school, was really key.
Yeah, I think creating a vision and including people to build that vision is a real strong way to do that. What role do middle leaders play in embedding that vision?
So, the structure we have in our school is that we have a year group leader in each year group, and that's been such an important role. Last year, we didn't focus on it on middle leaders in a huge amount, because last year was around the first year being imposed getting a senior team, because there was a lot of restructuring and building that team to have a really effective senior team. Whereas this year it's been a much bigger focus on middle leaders, and that's been a really key role into develop our middle leaders, because they're going to be the future senior leaders of our school. But also their keys that our middle leaders are also in class teachers. They're the ones delivering and doing implementing the change that we need to put in place. And with such a big staff team, we wouldn't have been able to implement that change without middle leaders being on that journey with us and being on board with it, and being the ones there who can support their teachers and their teams on a daily basis. So they've been without effective middle leaders in post, that change wouldn't have happened as quickly as it's happened.
Being a strong leader, a massive part of that is communication. Are there any sort of routines or habits or behaviours that you would give as tips for other head teachers entering a new school?
I think the number one tip would be over communicate, and we're very open that any change that's happening, anything that's going on in school, we share that rationale with staff of we're doing this because of this, and everyone's aware of that, and everyone's a part of that change process. So we'll consult with staff and get staff input on different elements or on different policies. But I think just over communicating everything and not making the assumption that people know what's happening, and the more that people know, and that just make sure it means that people are then on board with that change because they understand it. They know the reason why we're doing it, and they will then deliver it. But I think just communicating everything as much as you can, it would be it is so important.
84 staff. How do you check in with them, and how often do you check in with them? It's a big task.
It is. It's difficult because you don't see every member of staff every day. You get to the end of the week and you might not have seen some of the staff through the week, because you can't be everywhere through the week, particularly if you're in and out of school quite a lot. But again, just keeping that. So we do some really basic things. So we do a whole staff briefing on a Friday morning, which is a time where the majority of staff are in. Obviously, you don't see people like your cleaners or lunch supervisors at that time. But then we follow that up on a Monday morning with a briefing email, which all staff get. And then we'll do regular check-ins. So we'll do regular meetings with all the lunchtime supervisors together to give them updates and reminders of safeguarding and behaviour expectations, those kind of things. We'll get the cleaners together and do briefings with them. And a big part of it is relying on the rest of the team. So I know my business manager, he will do the check-ins with, he will line manage cleaners. So he'll be communicating and checking in on them regularly, make sure they know what's happening. One of my deputies will be doing the kind of pastoral team and doing those check-ins there. So it's just making sure that across the senior team, everyone is on board with that. But then that we've got those regular communication points where so staff get those messages from me of what's happening that week or anything they need to be aware of.
How do you ensure your sort of senior leadership team is fully aligned and able to embed your vision across the departments?
I think it's a shared vision, and like I said, last year a big part of last year was building that senior team. And part of that, there were some existing members of staff who were already in the school when I came in. I brought in some new members of staff as well, and we have a regular. We meet weekly. We meet every morning. We have a 8:30 briefing for the senior team, which is where we just talk about the day, what's going on that day, anything we need to be aware of, so we all know what each other's doing. Just because of being a big team. but again, and then we have our weekly senior leadership meeting as well, which is where we'll kind of strategically then think about, this is what where we'll plan ahead for next week. We'll plan ahead for priorities, or how we're going to implement a new change. And I think just have it, because we're a very close team who work together well. We communicate well. We spend a lot of time together. We've got that shared vision. So I know that that when one of the deputies or one of the assistant heads is going out speaking to staff, it's the same message that I would give, because we've planned that together.
So a big part of it is sort of the camaraderie that you guys have, and like you say, over communicating, and everybody sort of being very clear on what the expectations are and how they're going to deliver that. When it comes to that, one thing that I've noticed with successful schools and successful businesses actually is the importance of developing people. Sort of us as a business, we're really passionate about that. In fact, it's one of our core values. How do you identify development needs across such a large team? That must be a headache.
It can be, but again, it comes down to having. So it's delegating and just having the right people in the right role. So again, as part of our appraisal process, we will staff have an input into that. So we, as part of that, we will find out what one appraisal objective will be linked to something they want to develop. So that again, as a whole senior team, we're aware of that for every member of staff. And it's just having the right members of staff in place. I can't. Whereas in a one form, I could pretty much line manage most people. In a three form with a large staff, I can't do that. So it's making sure we've got that even spread of, I line manage the senior team and the middle leaders, so TLR holders. My deputy heads will then line manage teachers and some of the support staff. Business manager will line manage certain people as well. So it's just having that really clear kind of almost separation of roles, so everyone knows who is responsible for what.
Great. If we start to talk a little bit about culture, how do you create a culture where your staff feel safe to develop, experiment, and improve the practice?
Again, I think that comes back to that over communicating. I think in order to be able to develop and try new things and make mistakes, people need to feel safe at work and almost have that psychological safety, that they know they're not going to be in trouble if they make a mistake, or then they know that they can come and say something or challenge something, and they feel comfortable doing that. And again, I think I don't think there's any complicated way of doing that other than being there for staff, just being available, staff knowing that that you're there for them, and you've got their best interests. And again, I think it comes back to building that relationship with them and getting to know individuals, and having that culture in school where and I'll be very honest with staff, if I've done something and it hasn't quite worked out, or I've organised something and I've messed up a date, or I'll send an email around and just apologies that and put that out there, so staff see that I'm willing to make mistakes, and that if I do, I'll put my hands up and say I've done that. And I think that message quickly spreads amongst staff, then that they know that that's the culture of school. And again, just through that communication, just being really open and honest with people and saying, we're going to try this. We know it's a challenge. We want your opinions and your thoughts, and just keep drip feeding that message with everyone.
I've got another question for you about development, actually. How do you identify people in your team that you think are right for that could be developed into more senior roles? And how do you communicate staff within your team to approach you about looking for progression? Because obviously for me, the success of any school or any business is about retention of staff. You can't build on something if you keep losing your staff, sort of thing. So how do you go about having an open door policy where people can talk about their development?
And again, it's also that future planning as well, isn't it? That like I said, our middle leaders now, our teachers and people, early career teachers, our next middle leaders, our next senior leaders, And we were having this conversation today. Where we can, we want to appoint and develop in-house rather than always appointing externally. But again, part of that is through appraisal and having those conversations with staff around, right, what do you want? What is your next step? Where do you want to go? I meet with staff. So when I first started in September last year, I did a one-to-one meeting, excuse me, with every member of staff to find out what are their interests, what is their ambition, where do they want to go, what development do they want, and just having that that constant conversation, really. So when through our professional development program, we will talk to staff. We will offer when any trainings come in, we'll encourage staff to be part of the MPQs and try and encourage staff to take that professional development. And again, because we've got that open culture and staff know they can come and ask questions and they can come and say they want to develop in certain ways, they will come and just say, actually, I've seen a course I'd like to do. Can I do it? And if it's possible to do it, then we will put staff forward for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really encouraging. That is, I think that's what staff want to hear. Certainly in performing schools. One thing I wanted to talk about is the wider community. So becoming a new leader in a school, one of the things that I think I see that you would need to get right is getting the parents on board and building good relationships and with parents and sort of other stakeholders. What's your approach to doing that when taking on a new school?
So particularly when I became head at my previous school, that wasn't particularly prior to that, because I'd been there already for a number of years as an assistant head. It wasn't something I particularly had to think about because I knew that community well as I took over. Moving into the school I'm in now, where I didn't know the community at all. I knew the community in terms of the just I grew up not far from the community from where we are.
Graphics, yeah. But
I didn't know the particular makeup of that community. And again, when I came in, community didn't have particularly the best relationship with the school in terms of feeling like the community was part of the school community and the local community really working together. And thinking back to last year, one of the things that I did, pretty much every day, before school and after school, I was meeting with parents, and I was almost being that first person they would come to, because partly they wanted to get to know me and they wanted to share any issues or any concerns they had, and they wanted to bring those to me. But as a senior team, we had to give up and be readily available, so that to build that relationship with the community and build trust in the community, they had to see that they could bring an issue to us and they'd see something done about it straight away. And a lot of time was given up to that last year. And it felt at the time like that's all we were doing, is meeting with parents and having those conversations. Whereas now that's still a really key part, but because we've built that trust in the community and we've built that relationship with parents, we don't have to do it as much now. But we can also now delegate that to middle leaders who can have those conversations, because parents now don't always need to come straight to me with every problem, because that trust is there, that they know they can go to any member of staff and it will get dealt with. But bringing the community on board and along with you is such an important job. I know that when I first started at school, in the community, we didn't have the best reputation, and just through building that trust and giving that time, that reputation grows over time then, and that makes that that relationship with the community so much easier.
Brings me on to my next question. When entering a new school, and the school hasn't got the best relationship with parents or stakeholders, how do you handle that, and how do you communicate the changes that you're going to make and make sure that the parents do feel heard?
So again, like I say, it can be stressful, and it takes in any school, having the community on board with you is really key. And again, it doesn't have to be anything particularly complicated. So just through your basic kind of newsletters, making sure the community know what's happening in school. We've had to work closely with not just the parent community, but the wider local community, so the neighbours. And again, being in a big school, we parking is just as it is in any school, but parking is an issue in the area. So we make sure we send letters out to all of our neighbours around school, so they know what's happening. So if we've got parents' evening or a disco or whatever it might be that's going to impact parking and congestion outside of the normal school hours, we make sure neighbours know about that. And so they expect that, so it doesn't come as a shock when things happen. We offer regular coffee mornings where parents can come in and meet with the senior team, where they we can almost just do like a Q&A session. We'll share our priorities for the year. We'll share these are the things that we're looking to work on, and just a chance to have that open forum where they've got the senior team there to answer any questions, or they can raise any concerns with. The most powerful thing is just being available, and it's quite easy to not have those meetings, or to not answer the phone when the parents call trying to get hold of you. But again, we find that the earlier you deal with those things, the easier it is to deal with. But also building that trust that parents then know that you're listening to them, and you will do something about what they're raising with you.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I've been a parent myself and seen how school communicates you, because you're part of the community, a massive part of the community. The next question is about leadership. So for me, being a leader, I don't know about you, but I can find it incredibly isolating. So what I wanted to know is how important are the networks that you have around you, and how do you get external perspective on some of the challenges that you face? Because I think that external perspectives and having like a soundboard, somebody who probably in your position or a part of a wider network, I feel like that's really empowering. So I just wanted to see what your networks are, or like how do you get external sort of influence?
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, having those networks is really important. One is being able to pick up the phone to the neighbouring head teacher, or someone down the road from you, to say, what would you do? Or this has happened, and then I'm I think 6-7 years into Headship, and there's still things happen every week that's something new that I haven't dealt with before. And having someone you can pick up the phone to is really important. And that can be we work. We've got a network of local schools who work together, and we meet regularly, half termly, and past that can just be an opportunity to talk. So you've got those networks. You've also got your networks that like for me, I worked in Birmingham previously before moving across to Dudley, but you've got those networks that you've created with colleagues in other local authorities, in other schools. So again, just having that friend at the end of the telephone. But something that's been really, really key for the development that we've done here at Roberts is that external support around just being open and outward looking. So we work with a number of consultants and some of those is quite specific and specialised. So we've got a phonics consultant, or we've had an early years person, or someone who will come and support us with attendance and inclusion. And then I've got kind of a generic school improvement advisor as well. And for me, that it's a big investment, because you're spending a lot of money to bring people in, but the impacts that has is worth the investment, the financial investment. And for me, that I meet with my school improvement advisor every 4 weeks, and we have that day together in school, and that's almost my coaching session and my therapy session as well. But that's where I offload and say, right, this has happened, and what would you do? we unpick those problems and work together on that, as well as school improvement and strategic planning and that. But one of the most powerful things is that opportunity where we just sit at the beginning of those meetings and talk about what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and that's just my opportunity to offload to a trusted person.
Yeah, I've found that incredibly empowering, and I think for me and my business, it has helped us grow, and I don't know whether we would have necessarily always been able to do that. I think sometimes as a leader, you can have this sort of closed mindset that you know everything, and it's like, well, you don't know everything. There's people out there who are experts, and they can get you from A to Z much quicker than you'll ever do, because they'll share their knowledge with you and they'll know what things could trip you up, so you can avoid that. Or so I've found that really, really useful. So it's interesting to see what you say. I suppose what for me is like, I suppose the message is to make sure that you do have people that you can have those talks with who have had shared experience to you, I'd say.
Definitely, and like for us, we talk to staff a lot around coaching, and we've implemented that coaching model across school. And the way that I share that with staff is that, as that having a school improvement advisor, that's my coaching, where someone's coming in and working alongside me in that way, or coaching me in terms of things we might need to think about, or things that have happened that we need to reflect on. And as I think as head teacher, it's quite easy to not have that, and you provide it for your staff, and you're there to develop staff, and you give staff that time for professional development. But it's really important as head teacher or a leader in any organisation, I suppose, that you dedicate that time for yourself as well, because it's easy to not do that.
I always find that the most powerful insights sometimes come from reflection. What leadership lessons have stayed with you from your first year as head teacher at Roberts?
I suppose kind of the key things really in terms of the lessons that from that first year, it is, I suppose going back to that importance of communication and building the right team. And if I hadn't have done that early on and built the right senior team, and then having to make, and when you look back on last year, we had to make some really difficult decisions around staffing, decisions that impacts people and their lives. And I think that the key thing for us as a leadership team is that we on that first day when I came into the school, we talked to staff around as a leadership team. We're going to make lots of decisions, and some of them are going to be things that you're on board with, some of them will be things that might challenge. And the reason we do it is because if it's we talk a lot about, if it's not good enough for my children or my deputy's children or whoever, it's not good enough for our children at school. And I suppose one of the key lessons is just that reminder of, we have to keep coming back to that, and almost on a weekly basis we remind ourselves of that saying, really, that if we've got a difficult decision to make, well, we're doing it because it's got to be good enough for our children. And I think just holding that at heart, really.
Looking back, what helped you settle quickly and lead with confidence in a new environment?
I suppose it comes back to the team, and knowing that because of the way that we set that vision early on, and having that team on board with the change and part of that vision and part of the development, that kind of gave me the reassurance that we were doing the right thing, and that we were making the right decisions, and staff came along with that and wanted to be part of that change and development. And I think just knowing that I'd got the staff team, their support, and they're on board with what my vision for the school was, that meant that I could settle into the role. I didn't have to worry about that fight of change. Really, I think that really helped.
With that, a lot of our listeners or viewers are either aspiring heads or leaders early in their headship journey. What advice would you give an aspiring early careers head teacher that's looking to strategically lead in a complex school?
I think first of all, you've got to find the school that's right for you, and I think you've got to be really clear on that. And it's really easy to take a position because one becomes available, or that you get offered a position. But I think going into a community or into a school that isn't exactly what you want, my advice would be don't do it. Find the school that works for you, find the community that you want to be part of, and find the school where you're confident that you can drive that forward with your own knowledge and background. So that otherwise it's a full-on job. That you have to be 100% committed, and it needs to be a school that you're 100% part of, and are there to bring that school on that journey.
I think my daughter's school head teacher brought her own child into the school the other day, and I think it is that all-encompassing. You're part of the community, So I think it is really important to choose the right school, get the right position, and sort of look at what are you looking to achieve, and do you think you can achieve it? And it's not just got to be about money; it needs to be the whole package. I think you're right there. Are there any leadership habits you rely on to stay grounded and connected with your staff?
Again, I know I keep saying it, but I think it does come back to that communication, and to staying connected with you've got to be available for staff. Again, as head teacher or any senior leader, everyone's busy. Whether you're the head teacher, whether you're a teacher, a TA, whatever your role is, everyone is busy. But if you're not available for staff, whether that's before school, after school, throughout the day, at the end of the phone, and when staff need something, I think that's where it becomes difficult. And I think you've got to keep that contact and that relationship, and develop that, and not become almost separated from the staff team. I think that's really important that you're there, and staff know they've got that access to you, and they can come and have that contact and find you when they need to, and having that open door policy. So I think really just being available, and having really strong communication with the team.
Brilliant. To finish, I'd love our listeners. I'd love you to leave our listeners one final thought. So, if attendees took away just one message about strategic leadership, what would you want it to be? And please, can you keep it to one sentence?
That's really hard to do. I suppose that in one sentence, the key thing would be, almost don't be afraid to make the big decisions that you need to make. You know at heart what's right for the school, what's right for the community, and you know what needs to happen to drive that school. Build the team around you that you need, but make those decisions that as difficult as they might be sometimes, but don't shy away from those big decisions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Carl. It's been a real pleasure and really insightful into your headship. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Thank you.